Hello, and welcome to today's teleseminar on the impact of the current economy on training. I'm Judy Asman, the principal of Judy Asman Communication, an Orange County, California-based restaurant marketing agency. I'm hosting this call in partnership with RestaurantRevolution.com. Our guest today is John Alexander, a 35-year veteran of the hospitality industry and board member for CHART, the Council of Hotel and Restaurant Trainers. Before moving to a sales career with major food manufacturers, John spent 10 years working in operations for hotel and restaurant management. He has worked for the National Restaurant Association Solutions as Director of Sales for the Southeast region, representing the ServSafe brands for the past 7 years. John is serving his second term on the board of directors of CHART, an organization that empowers hospitality managers and owners with effective training solutions. John will be speaking on the importance of maintaining a viable training program in an economic downturn, as well as offering helpful information on how to do so. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Judy.
Good to talk to you today.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, listen, why don't we start with your describing CHART and its membership?
Certainly. CHART is the oldest nonprofit organization dedicated to the development of the hospitality training professional. We currently have over 700 members, and those hail from about 500 different companies. CHART holds 2 conferences per year, one in the winter and one in the summer. The most recent one was in Minneapolis in March and had an attendance of about 170 people. That was notable because it was the 75th semi-annual conference, quite a milestone, with CHART having been initially formed in 1971. The summer conference will be taking place in Washington, D.C., at the brand new Gaylord National Hotel. It's an amazing property, and that will take place from August 9th through the 12th. So it's my pleasure to represent CHART today and to share the results of some surveys that we took recently of our members at the Minneapolis conference. And the purpose of the survey was to capture CHART members' sense of the impact of the current economy on training programs.
Okay, great. And we definitely know that the state of the economy is on deck now. It's a major concern for a lot of people, especially in terms of how it impacts the restaurant industry. Let's go ahead and start talking about the economy. Do you have any recent information on the economic outlook and how it affects the restaurant industry?
I do. Every month, the National Restaurant Association publishes a restaurant performance index, and that measures the health and the outlook of the industry. The outlook for the industry continued to weaken in March and stood at a rating of 97.9, down 0.9% from February, and was the lowest level on record. A quote from Hudson Raleigh, the Senior Vice President of Research and Information Services for the association, he stated that the March decline in the Restaurant Performance Index was a result of a broad-based declines in both the current situation and expectation indicators, how people feel that the economy will be in the upcoming months. And he said that 6 out of the 8 indicators declined in March, signifying both a slowdown in the current industry performance as well as a weakening in the outlook for the industry in the months ahead. Further, he said that the soft economy continues to weigh very much on the minds of restaurant operators. 25% of restaurant operators said that the economy is the number one challenge facing their business, followed by food cost concerns of about 22% of the people responding to that, building and maintaining sales volume, and finally recruiting and retaining employees. So there's a lot of other reports as well that support challenging times ahead for the restaurant industry and the overall economy in general.
Okay. And what was some of the information CHART learned from the survey they did at the Minneapolis conference?
CHART discovered that about 77% of the attendees felt that their restaurant or hotel companies were experiencing some belt tightening, such as budget cutbacks and expense scrutiny. About 60% said that the training departments have been somewhat to significantly affected by cutbacks. The casual dining segment in particular appears to be the hardest hit, as 60% of those affected were from casual dining establishments. So the squeeze is showing up in a number of different ways, everything from hiring freezes for training departments or new staff requests not being approved, support for field training decreasing, lowered standards at store openings, and reductions in training budgets. So training departments are being asked to do more with less, as there's less money to spend on external training programs, and more training programs are being developed internally with less staff. CHART's position is that companies should continue to use caution when it comes to simply cutting training to curtail expenses. CHART's current president, Kurt Archambault, also a regional training manager for Jack in the Box, has said, now is the time to actually inject new life into your brand and your service through training, not cutting training programs. He continues that savvy operators realize the connection between engaged employees, delighted guests, and operational performance. And he says that trainers are at the core of hiring and creating engaged employees.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is an important point to drive home, that CHART's position is that companies should use caution when it comes to simply cutting training to curtail expenses. Now, what are some of the risks restaurants face by cutting back on training at this time?
Well, there's several that come to mind, Judy, because together they create a bit of a vicious cycle. So some of the risk would be a staff that is less knowledgeable. They don't know the menu. They don't know the systems and the processes within the restaurant. It could lead to a lowering of standards, that the good standards that have attracted customers may not be held up as highly as they have in the past. Ultimately, that can lead to a decline in customer satisfaction levels, which can lead to a drop in guest counts. Ultimately, that could result in a negative word of mouth, rumors in the community that this may not be the place to go. So poorly trained staff also places a tremendous demand on the producers within the restaurant. If new employees are brought in and they're not properly trained, the veteran employees start to feel extra pressure, and ultimately those high-performing employees tend to quit. And then it's difficult to find good replacements, especially if they're not provided with proper training. So revenue drops and further cutbacks can take place. The opposite is the classic service profit chain, in which well-trained and engaged employees deliver outstanding service. As a result, customers enjoy the experience, become loyal customers, and they positively recommend the restaurant to others, increasing sales and therefore increasing profits.
Okay. Excellent. And we definitely know that the staff is the brand for the restaurant, and so that means morale must remain high at a time like this. What are some other negative repercussions that come from reducing or eliminating training?
A real concern would be the erosion of the company's culture, in which employees care less and confusion takes over. Turnover is bound to increase in both the employee and the management ranks, and the economic challenge naturally puts a tremendous strain on an organization. And that's when it needs to stand true to its culture, not to abandon it.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen examples of companies drawing on the strength of their culture to help them stay afloat?
One of the companies I know that places a great deal of emphasis on creating a positive connection between management and staff is Cattleman's Restaurant in California. Kelly Ames, Cattleman's Director of Training, has described events that their entire staff has come to enjoy, including annual whitewater rafting trips. But as with many companies, some tightening budgets have made it impossible for the company to completely cover the cost of that kind of a trip. But at the same time, they've clearly shared what is going on. They've shared the challenges that they as a company are facing with their staff. What are some of the revenue expectations and the expense expectations? So the staff has actually continued to bolster the culture by many of the individual managers and staff creating their own events that replace some things that in the past the company may have handed to them. So I think it's a great example of a culture running